I've had many experiences with orcas off the south coast of Iceland. And there you got to see them in their natural environment. You got to see them majestic in every way.
They're wide-ranging predators, traveling 100 miles a day and diving as much as 300 feet to forage. And they live in tightly knit family groups, often not leaving their birth family the whole lives. And in many of these families, the moms call all the shots.
We're talking about a level of emotional bonding that is beyond the par of what we experience as humans. Feelings and emotions come into play in orca and cetacean psychology in a very intense and very fundamental way. They have culture, they have dialects, they have interesting communication systems and a big brain. They're right up there with us. When you look at the orca brain through an MRI image, the neocortex, the thinking part of the brain, the gray matter, is actually more convoluted than that of the human brain. For a brain like that, there is nothing to do in a concrete tank.
There are actually 3,000 whales and dolphins in captivity around the world. There are 57 orca, more than 300 beluga,
and they live in very small tanks, often not any deeper than the whales are long.
A concrete tank is like an auditory hall of mirrors. At first, they're going to get back a lot of echoes, and eventually, they're going to realize there's nothing to echolocate on. And at that point, they simply shut down.
And in captivity, they live in artificial families. Mothers and calves are separated based solely on commercial interest. Captive whales rarely live more than 20 years. Fewer than 50% lived more than 4 years after capture.
The captive industry makes the point that they're providing education about orcas to all of their audiences.
I think it's anti-educational. It teaches kids that we as humans should dominate them, as opposed to anything about what they are as animals, what their culture is.
The reason China and other countries are capturing orcas and other cetaceans and putting them in concrete tanks is because of the success of marine parks in this country.
One could lose hope. One could say there are more and more animals being captured, and the numbers we have today will be nothing compared to what could happen in the future. But we have to put our hope in children to stand up and say no, and will demand of their parents, no matter where they live on the planet, that we treat these animals with understanding and care and keep them in the wild.
As the public ethic around keeping whales and dolphins in captivity changes, people are demanding that the shows stop and that the animals have an opportunity to live in more natural environments.
Most of the animals today in captivity were born in captivity. So releasing them would be in many ways tragic because they do not have the skills to survive in the wild.
The best solution is to build natural seaside sanctuaries where captive whales and dolphins can live in an environment as close to their natural habitat as we can provide. They'll have a sandy bottom with critters, fish, and crabs with whom to interact. They'll have birds on the surface to chase. And they will have space, more than 300 times more than the largest performance tank in captivity.
The captivity industry is looking at us. The public has the power to end this suffering.
Sanctuaries have been built for elephants, for gorillas, and big cats. And now is the time to create sanctuaries for whales and dolphins.
There is another way. Here it is.
好歡迎大家今日出席香港海豚保育學會主辦嘅牆外的鯨豚嘅放映同埋座談會啦。係啦，咁今日呢個座談會主要嘅主題咧，就係分享關於呢個圈養鯨豚同埋嘅問題啦，同埋我哋其實咧都已經係提議咗好耐一個叫做海濱庇護所嘅一個工作啦，就係希望俾一啲喺圈養環境入邊生活緊嘅鯨豚咧，係可以退休去一個好啲嘅環境度生活嘅。個短片就睇完啦，非常之精彩啊！大家見到好多好靚嘅一啲殺人鯨嘅畫面啦，唔同鯨豚嘅畫面啦，同埋入邊都討論咗好多究竟圈養海豚或者圈養殺人鯨啦，入邊主要講有啲咩問題咧，對啲動物造成有啲咩嘅傷害咧。咁入邊其實都好關香港事嘅，就係即係佢提及到中國或者亞洲地區嗰個圈養產業其實發展得好快啦，亦都令到嗰啲好多鯨豚可能要喺野外被捉翻嚟啊，越嚟越多嘅鯨豚可能喺圈養入邊繁殖啊，咁樣亦都係延長咗佢哋都同我哋係息息相關嘅。咁我哋見到 Charles 已經入咗嚟啦，咁首先非常歡迎佢啦，啱啱由電影入邊再跳出我哋現實生活同我哋傾偈咁樣。咁我首先簡單咁介紹一下 Charles 先啦。Charles 其實佢個經驗係非常之犀利，非常之豐富，即係聽完之後大家都會話即係wow一聲咁樣。咁 Charles 其實由17年開始咧就出任咗呢個 Whale Sanctuary Project 嘅執行董事啦。咁佢加入咗呢個會之前咧，就曾經擔任過2間環境科技公司嘅行政總裁啦，包括就係 Florida 嘅一間叫 Ecosphere Technologies 嘅公司啦，同埋另一間 Aquantus 就喺 Santa Barbara 嘅。咁 Charles 喺93年咧至到03年咧就擔任咗一個NGO 嘅副會長啦，兩個 NGO 嘅副會長啦。咁呢兩個NGO 咧，其實佢主要都係透過舉辦啲活動同埋製作短片啊、紀錄片咁樣咧，去宣揚翻海洋同埋環境保育嘅資訊咁樣嘅。而喺呢一段時間咧 ，Charles 咧亦都係參與咗殺人鯨或者虎鯨啦 ，Keiko 放歸冰島嘅呢一個計劃。咁呢個咁出名嘅放歸Keiko 嘅計劃咧，其實就係電影，如果大家有睇過叫 Free Willy 嘅一個真實嘅版本嚟嘅。咁呢個電影出咗之後，亦都改變咗好多人對圈養鯨豚嘅睇法啦。咁 Charles 咧對環境工作咧，亦都係即係投入咗好多精神同埋時間啦。咁佢亦都曾經咧係被美國嘅白宮同埋洛杉磯嘅市政府咧表揚佢對環境工作嘅貢獻嘅。咁就係非常之厲害嘅一個鯨豚福利嘅爭取嘅保育人士啦，亦都係環境保護嘅工作者，一個好資深嘅前輩嚟嘅。係啦，咁或者我哋開始進入公眾環節之前，簡單同 Charles 傾下偈，等佢熱下身，即係投入我哋今日嘅討論環節先。咁第一條問題想問 Charles 嘅，就係其實頭先條片入邊咧有提及過，其實 Whale Sanctuary Project 喺加拿大嘅 Nova Scotia 已經係開展緊一個揾咗一個選址喺 Nova Scotia 啦，亦都係開始緊點樣去準備嗰個海濱庇護所，話緊點樣擺一啲白鯨入去咁樣。可唔可以同我哋分享多少少而家嗰個海濱庇護所嘅進度係去到邊度咧？咁我知道 Charles 係準備咗一啲slides 去話俾我哋知而家究竟個海濱庇護所嘅進度係點樣嘅。
And so Taison, just before we start with the slides, I want to thank you and thank all of the people with the Hong Kong Dolphin Conservation Society for inviting me to join you.
Thank you so much, Charles.
Okay, so with the first slide, this is really just to show people where Nova Scotia is. And it's actually on the right side of the screen as you're looking at it, between Canada and the United States. And so in this slide, we just look at Nova Scotia itself, and we see the town marked where the sanctuary will be in Nova Scotia, and that's Port Hilford. And so we looked at over 130 different sites in North America before selecting Port Hilford. And we selected it because it had all of the attributes that are necessary for a sanctuary: depth and flow and good water space. But it also had a town that embraced everything about having a sanctuary. So here you see the actual sanctuary. This is 100 acres of water space, so much, much larger than anywhere a captive whale has ever been. It has depth, it has variety, it has all the kinds of enriching environment that these whales need to thrive. And that's why we've selected this site. And as you can see, there are no homes. So it is an environment that we can craft around the needs of the whales, and it's the needs of the whales that always come first.
Charles 就話呢個就係俾大家知道而家 Nova Scotia 個海濱庇護所嘅一啲最新嘅資料啦。咁亦都可以俾大家了解多啲究竟其實準備一個海濱庇護所需要做啲咩嘅咧，同埋大概海濱庇護所嗰個位置啊，或者之後個環境會係點樣嘅咧？咁我哋再問多 Charles 一條問題，就係其實即係大家見到 Charles 之前做咁多嘢啦，但係之後都即係好主力咁樣投入咗去推動呢個海濱庇護所嘅工作啦。咁頭先開頭簡介 Charles 嘅時候都講過 ，Charles 係參與過一個虎鯨 Keiko 野放去翻冰島嘅一個工作嘅。咁而 Keiko 呢個故事咧，其實啟發咗好多我哋就現階段做緊去將圈養鯨豚放歸自然嘅工作啦。咁可唔可以請你分享多啲關於 Keiko 入邊呢個工作嘅經驗，點樣可以帶到我哋今日做呢個海濱庇護所嘅工作嘅階段咧？咁樣。我知 Charles 又準備咗一啲 slide 去講下佢當年去點樣去野放 Keiko 嘅經驗嘅，可以請 Charles 去分享下。
So I was honored to be able to direct the Keiko project, and this was more than 20 years ago. And Keiko was the whale that was a movie star, and a movie star in the Free Willy movie. So in that sense, he was chosen for returning to the wild because he was a movie star, not because he was necessarily the best candidate. More than 10,000 children wrote to Warner Brothers, the film people, and said, "The whale is dying in Mexico City. You must return him to the wild." And so what's very important about this, and the reason the words are return to the wild rather than release, because for an orca to live in the wild, it needs to be with a family. It needs to be with a pod. So it's not just releasing Keiko, it's helping Keiko find a family that he can live with in the wild. So before we moved Keiko to Iceland, we moved him from the small tank in Mexico City, where he was when the film was made, to a special facility in Oregon for 2 years, where he gained 2,000 pounds in weight. He grew 7 inches in length, and he became healthy enough to then move to Iceland. So this is Klettsvik Bay in Iceland, and we netted off the bay and we put a bay pen inside. And the bay pen was where he lived in the beginning until he got comfortable with the whole area. And this is a beautiful day in Iceland, but in the winter, we would have 120 knot winds, huge waves, and ice in the bay. So the question is, how do you prepare a whale to return to the wild? And what you have to do is take the whale out for open ocean walks. So we would go out for 20, 30 miles of swim
getting Keiko prepared to swim with the wild whales, basically like marathon training for a person. And this is a picture of going for a walk with Keiko. So here we're on an open ocean walk, and basically we would look for wild whales. And then Keiko would approach the whales, and in some cases there was no interest by Keiko or the wild whales. And in other cases, there was a lot of interest and they got close together. And we did this all summer for 4 years. So Keiko was out in the wild all the time for 4 years. And you could see how lively he was. He loved being out in the ocean. He was robust and he took an interest in all of it, as well as in the whales. So here you see Keiko approaching other whales. And this is what we saw all the summer of the 4th year, when he was basically staying with wild whales away from us, comfortable with them for weeks at a time. So this is just to show you Keiko underwater away from our boat, and he would also come back to our boat on his own frequently. And in the summer of 2002, so in the 4th summer that we were there, he left us, Keiko left us and joined wild whales. He spent 3 weeks swimming with wild whales in Iceland, and then he swam 1,000 miles to Norway with wild whales when he left. But when he reached Norway, he was alone. So basically, when he reached Norway, he was not with wild whales, and he followed a fishing family, a fishing boat home up a fjord. And basically, he then lived the next year in the fjord, coming and going as he wanted, but we sent people to care for him. So they provided food, they provided anything he needed, but he was free to come and go as he wanted for the next year. And then he did die of a respiratory disease. He died of a lung disease in the winter of 2003. So he was in Norway for a full year before he passed away of the respiratory disease.
係啦，咁呢個就係非常之感謝 Charles 再分享咗呢個咁有趣嘅故事啦。咁大家如果有興趣又未睇過 Free Willy 呢個電影咧，我都非常之推介大家去睇下，究竟當時點解呢個電影咧會令到咁多人去關注咗呢個圈養虎鯨嘅呢個問題嘅。好啦，咁或者我都有一個少少嘅問題再 follow up 呢個分享啦，就係Charles 其實當時好多人咧喺 Keiko 4嗰陣認為，個計劃好似失敗咗嘅，因為佢去到就係你啱啱講到挪威之後1年，佢自由自在咁生活之後，但係1年就過咗身啦。咁會唔會你可以對呢啲人嘅睇法可以俾少少你嘅意見咧？咁同埋我都想問下你喺 Keiko 身上面學到最重要嘅嘢又係咩咧？
So what we've learned is, first of all, that he was living in a wild environment for 5 years. He was also, at the time, the oldest male whale in captivity. And for the last 5 years of his life, he had the most enriching, robust life of any captive whale. So in that sense, it was a success for his quality of life for those 5 years. So what did we learn? We've always known how easy it is to capture a whale. What we learned is how difficult it is to put one back. And that's why sanctuaries are so important.
咁啱啱 Charles 就講到，其實佢覺得呢個 Keiko 嘅計劃入邊最重要學到係咩咧？就係我哋成日都可能會認為好容易就會喺野外捉到一條海豚翻嚟擺喺圈養環境啦，但係其實呢個計劃就表達咗俾大家聽，其實要放翻一條鯨豚動物出去係有幾咁難嘅喺野外環境出邊。咁所以大家就 喺呢個 case 入邊就可以學到就係究竟海濱庇護所有幾重要啦，因為佢就可以即係令更多嘅鯨豚可以容易啲去再適應野生環境咁樣。
Okay, just in many ways, it's not up to us to return a whale to the wild or to release it, because the whales have to find other whales to live with. So we have to remember that only 2 of the whales in captivity today do we know anything about their families. So the odds are we cannot find their families. So the most humane thing we can do is to create natural seaside sanctuaries where captive whales can thrive.
好啦，咁或者我哋同 Charles 傾偈嘅環節就去到呢度先，唔係去到呢度啦，咁就真係進入去回答公眾問題嗰一個環節啦。咁我哋啱啱見到有一個現場觀眾嘅提問，就係建立一個海濱庇護，佢問香港有冇條件可以做到一個海濱庇護所？咁或者我哋可以問，因為呢個問題 Charles 未必答到啦，因為佢始終唔係香港啦。咁但係我哋可能可以問咗 Charles， 究竟個庇護所係需要有啲咩條件嘅咧？例如一啲環境嘅條件咁樣。咁我可能之後會再分享少少，究竟香港有冇呢啲條件去做一個海濱庇護所咧？
There are a number of physical requirements for a sanctuary. You need space, 60 or 100 acres of water space. You need a variety of depth, as much as 15 meters, 18 meters of depth, and shallow water. You need a lot of different environment on the bottom. So there's grasses and there's rocks and different things where the whales will be enriched. And you need a place where you're not interfering with fishing or homes or businesses. So you need an environment that's available for the sanctuary, and you need the people around it to embrace the idea and think it's a benefit for their community.
咁或者關於香港嗰個問題，我就可以分享多少少啦。咁其實香港咧本身唔係一個非常之理想嘅地方去做一個海濱庇護所啦，因為其實香港大家都知只有2種係長期居住喺香港水域嘅鯨豚類動物啦，就係中華白海豚同埋江豚嘅。雖然我哋間中有時會有啲另外嘅品種，一啲比較離岸嘅品種會嚟到香港啦，但係始終對於嗰啲品種嚟講咧，都未必係一個好理想嘅生活環境嚟嘅。咁同埋香港都會經常被颱風去侵襲啦。其實每年夏天都會有某一定數量嘅颱風啦。咁所以如果起咗個海濱庇護所，大家見到頭先有個網啊，或者有個牌啊，咁樣都有機會咧會令到嗰個設施咧會損壞咁樣嘅。咁同埋所以香港咧，我哋如果一直講緊話將海洋公園嘅海豚去放到海濱庇護所咧，我哋係需要尋求一個可行嘅選址啦，可能喺其他國家，例如咧，其實之前都有唔同嘅例子咧，係將一啲圈養嘅鯨豚由一個地方運到另一個。2019年咧，其實上海有2條白鯨咧，就已經喺19年嘅年中咧，係放咗喺冰島嘅一個海濱庇護所啦。咁佢哋而家都喺嗰度生活得好好嘅。咁而如果你講平鼻海豚啦，咁 Rick O'Barry 嘅 Dolphin Project 咧，其實佢哋喺印尼嗰度咧已經都有一個成立咗運作緊嘅海濱庇護所㗎啦。咁另外再一個例子就係其實幾年之前咧，南韓嘅濟州島啦，佢哋因為法院嘅裁判啦，要佢哋嘅圈養嘅一啲公園咧，要放翻佢哋嘅平鼻海豚出去大海啦。咁因為佢哋嘅平鼻海豚係喺當地捉嘅，咁所以佢哋就喺當地就設立咗一個海濱庇護所，咁就最後都將呢啲平鼻海豚去放翻去大海嘅。咁所以我哋未來嘅工作咧，都可能要去到外國嗰度咧，去尋求有冇呢一啲可行嘅位置咁樣。好，咁或者去到第2條問題，又係交咗俾我哋嘅問題啦，就係建立一個海濱庇護所咧，喺技術上會遇到啲咩困難咧？可以問下，因為 Charles 對呢個 喺呢個 Kiko 嘅計劃入邊非常之有經驗啦，咁就可以問多佢少少，究竟技術上會有啲咩嘅阻力咧咁樣。
So the challenges are first to find an ideal site. We looked for 2 years to find our site in Nova Scotia, and it is an ideal site because it has all the physical attributes and the human attributes to make it work. So the biggest challenge is finding a site. The second biggest challenge is certainly pulling together all the resources to do it. You have to raise a lot of money. And so this is a global effort. It's not about Canada or Hong Kong. It's about all of us doing this together around the world.
咁所以 Charles 啱啱就形容，其實海濱庇護所咧唔係淨係一個國家需要去做嘅一個事情嚟嘅，而係全球要一齊去合作去做啦，唔係淨係香港或者唔係淨係加拿大去做嘅，因為我哋需要好多人去投入，可能去有資源嘅提供資源啦，有錢嘅提供錢啦，有知識嘅提供知識啦，咁樣一齊合作先可以再容易啲去成立多啲海濱庇護所，去俾仲有好多生活緊喺圈養環境嘅鯨豚嘅。咁或者第三條其實有少少就係 follow up 頭先第二條問題嘅。咁要咁多錢嘅時候咧，其實好多營運緊嘅水族館咧，其實會好卻步啦，因為佢哋一來又唔想籌咁多錢，用咁多錢啦，二來又覺得即係哇要好長時間先可以做到呢樣嘢喎。咁所以我哋根據 Charles 嘅經驗咧，其實係需唔需要靠政府去立法去俾壓力呢啲咁嘅場所啊？定係其實通常都可以由圈養嘅機構去自發去做呢個海濱庇護所嘅可能初期嘅研究工作啊咁樣咧？
So I think the most important ingredient is public pressure. The public drives government and the public drives industry. Because if people vote with their feet by not going to public facilities, to marine parks, then the marine parks will work with people like us.
好啦，再下一條問題咧，就係其實可能 technical 啲啦，就係呢個朋友咧就問，究竟有冇Charles 知唔知道有冇邊啲水族館嘅鯨豚係已經計劃咗會擺去海濱庇護所嘅咧？同埋呢一啲咁嘅工幾時會開始咧？咁樣係啊 Yan 嘅問題嚟嘅。
So as a result of public pressure, the facility in France that holds 4 orca is now looking for a place to move the orca. We know in South Korea, because of public pressure, there are dolphinaria looking for new homes for their dolphins. So what we're seeing around the world is where the pressure of the public is moving government to pass laws to forbid keeping cetaceans in captivity, then industry begins to follow suit. Industry follows. So our policy is to have open arms to the captive industry, to work with them to find a better life for their whales.
係唔好意思，啱啱嗰條咧就唔係阿 Yan 嘅問題嚟嘅。咁阿 Yan 咧啱啱就喺現場就提咗一條問題啦，就係究竟個保護區咧係預計幾時可以正式使用咧？應該係問緊加拿大嗰個Nova Scotia 嗰個啦，同埋係咪已經有政府或者一啲主題樂園承諾咗唔會再圈養同埋放翻去鯨豚去保護區，定係 Charles 係要再去游說呢啲海洋嘅樂園嘅咧？即係究竟有冇一啲主題樂園入邊已經應承咗會將佢哋嘅鯨豚放去 Nova Scotia 嗰個海濱庇護所咧？咁樣
We are having conversations with a number of different marine parks around the world. So we're not at liberty to say where we are in those discussions yet, but we're certainly having discussions to identify the first residents for our sanctuary.
咁或者我哋再去下一條問題啊，都仲有好多問題啊，仲有幾條問題我哋可以再問埋嘅。咁比起爭取海豚退役嘅福利咧，即係成個海濱庇護所啦，咁我哋都係想將已經係圈養入邊嘅鯨豚嘅福利提升啦。但係呢位朋友咧就問，點解唔直接去提倡禁止鯨豚圈養咧？咁樣，例如好多國家都已經禁止咗海豚表演啊，或者禁止佢哋繁殖等等。咁呢兩個工作邊一個係 Charles 覺得會嚟得比較重要咧？
I think there has to be a place for the dolphins in captivity to go if there's legislation banning keeping them in captivity. So it's not one or the other, it's both. We have to do it all, and we can do it all together. And that's why a conversation like this with me in California and Taison in Hong Kong is so important, because we can all work together to have legislation and to create sanctuaries, which is the solution for captivity.
咁或者去到再下一條，就係Charles 覺得公眾嘅參與點樣可以幫到呢個海濱庇護所嘅成立咧？又或者即係公眾參與點樣可以幫助到呢個鯨豚保育咧？咁樣。
Well, I think the public, by sharing conversations and by sharing them with more and more people, they can influence a worldwide program, a worldwide mission to move whales and dolphins out of captivity and into sanctuaries. And yes, they're expensive, but they're less expensive than any new tank in a captive facility. So together, we can all raise the money to do what's right for the whales.
咁所以我哋一齊所有公眾同埋我哋 NGO 都一齊努力咁樣去令到更加多嘅圈養鯨豚咧係有可能去揾到海濱庇護所。咁我哋再問多一題啊，因為都仲有好多問題啊，我哋嘗試去盡量 go through 更加多朋友嘅問題。咁啱見到呢個朋友咧就問，其實香港政府咧都好受動物權益嘅團體嘅意見啦。咁嘉賓就係可能 Charles 或者我咁樣會建議我哋香港市民除咗教育可以做啲咩咧？咁頭先講咗話要教育身邊嘅人啦，但係除咗教育，我哋仲可以做啲乜嘢咧？海洋公園去最近大家都知道咁啊，佢哋嘅財政嘅困難而要轉型啦，可能變咗個商場啊咁樣。咁我哋如果喺呢個情況之下，又可以點樣去保障翻動物嘅福利咧？
Well, I think the public in Hong Kong can continue to advocate for better conditions for dolphins that are in dolphin area. And they can educate their children so that their children believe that whales and dolphins have to be in nature and not in captivity. And that will put pressure on the dolphin area and the government to make change. But we have to be ready for the change as well. So we all have to work together to bring about a better life for the dolphins. And I think the business model for the dolphin area can change because we have modern technology, we have VR, we have AI, we have all the technology to show people in a theater, in a dolphin area, the dolphins that are now in a sanctuary. And we can teach children about how they live in nature, from nature, rather than from a dolphin area.
咁所以我哋最重要都係要教識我哋嘅下一代海豚係屬於大自然啦，而我哋都已經有好多方法去學習關於佢哋嘅知識啦，而已經唔需要再去水族館去學習關於鯨豚嘅保育嘅資訊嘅。係啦，咁我哋見到Facebook Live 都仲有幾條問題，或者我哋問多兩條啊，因為時間都差唔多啦，但係我哋都想答到多啲大家嘅問題。 或者問呢條呢條都好有趣。究竟我哋點樣先知道邊一啲鯨豚係會適合放去海濱庇護所啊？甚至係會唔會有啲鯨豚係適合去真係去野放，好似 Keiko 咁樣做嘅咧？係我哋係要啲咩條件先可以話到俾即係我哋點樣去評估邊一條鯨豚去適合去野放咧咁樣？
So all species are candidates for going into a sanctuary. So it's not about choosing a species, but it is about understanding the health of each individual dolphin or whale that would be considered. So they need to be in reasonable health. They need not to have any kind of pathogen that could infect wild animals, because we don't want to do anything to harm wild whales as well. So there's a protocol for selecting the whales and dolphins before they go to a sanctuary, and there's months of preparation at the marine park with the people who have been caring for them before. So all species are possible, but we have to look at each individual on their own before moving them and selecting them for life in a sanctuary.
咁我哋或者時間都差唔多啦，我哋去埋我哋問多一條公眾嘅問題 ，Charles 或者我啦，中國內地嘅圈養業啦，我哋有咩睇法咧？咁樣即係專門咁樣睇就係香港海洋公園啦，究竟係咪中國內地嗰個情況會比香港嗰個情況更加差咧？咁我唔知 Charles 有冇去過內地嘅場館啦，但係我諗 Charles 都有睇過好多片段，係可能係關於一啲亞洲或者大陸嘅一啲圈養場所嘅咁樣。
In China is very serious because they're building more marine parks than anywhere else in the world, and therefore they're a market, an import market for captive whales and dolphins. What I'm pleased to say is that there are organizations like yours in China that are advocating for change. And we need to continue to reach out to China, to reach out to the children in China, and show them that there's a better way, so they'll put pressure on the Chinese government and the Chinese marine parks, just the way you're putting pressure in Hong Kong. We need to do it everywhere. The situation in China is difficult, but we need to be persistent, as Taison has said, and we need to continue to do our good work everywhere.
咁或者我再 comment 多少少就係我自己親身都有去過一啲內地嘅水族館嘅。咁如果同香港海洋公園比起上嚟咧，咁香港嘅海洋公園的而且確係比內地水族館嘅質素係比較高啦，包括我哋嘅獸醫嘅質素高啲啦，內地可能有啲水族館連獸醫都冇嘅，咁場地嗰個質素亦都比較好啦，保養得比較好啲啦。我哋見到有啲好新嘅內地嘅一啲水族館咧，其實佢可能起咗半年，但係嗰個折舊嘅情況已經非常之嚴重，就係因為佢哋可能用嘅建築嘅物料啊，或者佢哋本身嘅設計都係比較差咁樣，咁所以令到大家都可能喺新聞上面聽過好多，即係邊度中國邊個城市又有一隻最慘嘅北極熊啊，或者有啲好慘嘅即係海豚啊，或者海牛啊喺入邊，咁嗰個情況係即係好都幾難想像嘅。如果你冇親身去過，咁所以我哋最重要嘅一樣嘢就係我哋成日都鬧香港海洋公園啦，但係譬如大家都唔好去忽視咗，譬如你去旅遊去外地玩嘅時候咧，去到譬如日本見到水族館係一個好著名嘅景點啊，但係千祈都唔好支持呢啲水族館，因為其實好似 Charles 頭先開頭都有講，成個反對圈養鯨豚或者海濱庇護所呢一個工作咧，係一個全球性嘅一個需要大家合作嘅一個工作嚟嘅。咁所以大家要記住，經常要去教育身邊嘅人啦，經常要 update 自己多啲嘅資訊啦，要持久啦，因為呢啲游説啊，呢啲同身邊嘅人分享資訊嘅工作咧係需時嘅，但係我哋其實轉變㗎啦，即係包括其實海洋公園都 喺近呢10年咧，根據過好多次唔同嘅公眾嘅壓力而改變過佢哋嘅決策啦。咁樣例如11年、12年，佢哋都因為本身係想購入白鯨嘅，都因為公眾嘅壓力而最後冇購入啦。咁呢啲咁少嘅勝利咧，係雖然未必係做到一個好大嘅轉變啦，但係我哋都要去即係鼓勵自己。其實我哋不斷去自己去學習多啲知識，或者去教育身邊嘅朋友，再同時俾一啲壓力我哋嘅政府同埋我哋嘅產業咧，其實都會最後會帶嚟一啲好實質嘅轉變嘅。咁或者我哋今日嘅活動就去到呢度啦，都已經超過咗1個小時啦。咁非常之多謝 Charles 今日出席我哋嘅活動啦。想再問多次 Charles 會唔會可能有一個結語或者一個 conclusion 想俾翻我哋今日嘅觀眾咧？
Well, first I want to thank all of you for joining with Taison and me today. It's an honor for me to meet Taison and to meet all of you virtually. But I think the most important takeaway from today is that there is hope for the whales that are in captivity. It's possible to create sanctuaries for them throughout the world, and we can do this only if we're all working together and if we're communicating with one another about the problems we face and the solutions that we can bring together. And so that's really, to me, what's most important, is working with you, having you know that you can work with us, and that we're all in this together, and that we're going to solve the problem and create sanctuaries for the dolphins and whales that are in captivity. It's been done for elephants. It's been done for chimpanzees. It's been done for the big cats. Now's the time for all of us together to do it for cetaceans, for whales and dolphins.
咁佢有一點想大家喺今日嘅活動之後係記住嘅，就係將圈養鯨豚放翻去海濱庇護所咧，係非常之有希望嘅，因為其實已經做過啦，同埋已經做緊㗎啦。咁所以我哋要即係最重要嘅就係要 keep 住一齊繼續溝通啦，好似我哋唔同即係國際嘅組織去合作啦，去一齊去展開新嘅工作啦咁樣。咁佢亦都形容到其實一啲庇護所咧已經喺陸地上面我哋有做過俾大象啦，有一啲大型嘅貓科動物啦，或者啲大猩猩啦咁樣。咁而家其實就係一個時間咧，我哋去將呢個工作去推展到呢個海豚、鯨豚動物身上，令到呢啲可能曾經喺圈養環境生活嘅動物咧有更好嘅生活咁樣。我哋都要再一次多謝 Charles 今日去花咗1個鐘同我哋傾偈啦。咁呢個係而家已經係黃昏嘅時間啦。咁 Charles 都抽空出席咗今日嘅活動，係非常之難得嘅。咁我亦都好希望真係之後個疫情嘅情況好轉之後咧，我哋唔知會唔會真係有機會去邀請 Charles 嚟到可能香港啊，或者我哋親身去同 Charles 可以講更多關於海濱庇護所啊或者鯨豚圈養嘅問題啦。而家呢個階段咧，我只可以同大家講就係我哋可以繼續留意多啲海濱庇護所嘅新聞啦。因為我知道 Charles 喺加拿大嗰邊已經越嚟越多工作進行緊，已經即將可能都會有鯨豚放到去個海濱庇護所㗎啦。咁我哋就期待更加多嘅好嘅消息，喺不久將來會有更加多嘅鯨豚可以擺到海濱庇護所啦。咁我哋今日亦都喺 Charles 身上學咗好多嘢啦。咁我希望在場嘅觀眾問咗問題嘅觀眾又好，或者之後其實大家可以將呢個 Facebook Live 去 share 出去啦，俾身邊嘅朋友啦。我哋呢個短片會擺喺 Facebook 一段時間嘅，咁大家可以就係隨意咁樣去 share 俾身邊嘅朋友啦。覺得有趣嘅，亦都可以聽完之後未必 share 俾身邊嘅朋友，即係直接 share 個 link 俾朋友，但係都可以將你今日聽到或者學到嘅資訊再同翻屋企人啊或者朋友講咁樣。咁最重要就係即係大家喺呢個疫情之下去保持自己身體健康啦，同埋去 take care 咁樣嘅。咁或者我簡單嘅英文講一次，就係同 Charles 講多謝啦咁樣。So thank you so much for Charles for spending your evening with us today. So I sincerely hope that we can have you maybe in person to have another conversation in Hong Kong or in the States to talk more about whale sanctuary project. And in the meantime, I'll wait for more good news related to the seaside sanctuary in the coming future. I hope there will be a lot of good news from you. And I've learned so much from you, Charles, today. And I hope everyone of our audience feels the same. And I just want to say thank you again, Charles.
Thank you very much,
Yep.
Taison.
And
it's an honor for me to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I hope everyone will enjoy the rest of your weekend and take care and stay safe. See you again.